Hey there. Hi there. Okay, I'm coming on and I'm also going to go live here. Let's see if we've got that. Hello. All right, perfect. We've got that one going. I'm streaming into several different locations and I want to welcome you today on this Tuesday. Thank you for showing up. I'm Kathy Freeman with Kathy Freeman Art. I've got it going into, yep, looks like it's showing everywhere that I need it to go. How are you today? Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit and sharing a project with you, and it's about the underpainting. I wanted to, I was experimenting. If you see on my right here, you can see I've got this red canvas, and the underpainting is red. And so my experiment was I wanted to see what that was like. When I paint in that, I usually will put down my image, the sketch of what I'm doing, and then I start to do the values and then do kind of a wash over that. But I thought, let's see what it's like to use this. And before I start with the project of what I'm actually doing, where did I put that? I have such a busy desk here, such a busy desk, so many things flying in all directions. Well, it's my floral, and I'm so sorry. I don't know where it ended up. Just as not sure where that ended up, and that's just fine because we're gonna move forward. You'll see it in the work. But let me share with you a little bit about also before we talk about that, I want to talk about layering. And I want to just share with you this is a project that I've got coming up here with my art sisters, and it's for July. This was so much fun to create. In here are a good, and I'm talking within the flower itself, there are 3, 4 different layers of color to pull together to give us that wonderful, rich color that's there now. And as you look at it, you can see bits of the pink that's in there and the different things. But each layer just kind of like uncovers, and it's very settling to paint that in. And so I like to look at my art as a place that can emotional release, a place that I can go and just kind of chill, not have to figure things out, and just really put a lot of my focus in on what the colors are doing and let those colors enrich and lift me. And that's why I also chose to do this red background because as an underpainting, because when you look at that red, it's very vibrant and it triggers. Hi, Sue. It's good to see you here. Thanks for saying something. I say we've got several people watching. So go ahead and say hello. Tell me where you're from. I'm glad you're here. This underpainting, you saw, Sue, what we're going to be doing. I already showed that to you yesterday, but we're going to do that coming up in July. This red, though, I started the project that I'm going to share parts of it with you today because I wanted to see how the paint would respond to it. I wanted to see what would happen as I started layering. From the little bit of research I did, it says that when you put your colors on top, it actually makes them a little more vibrant. It creates this warm glow to your painting. I thought, oh, I love all those, so let's try that. The other thing that's really neat, and you don't have to use red. You could use an underpainting of ochre. You could do it, of blues. Each one is going to create a little bit different mood as you start. I personally wanted this red because I wanted something that was full of life and energy and just invigorating. And when I look at it personally, it excites me and it makes me excited to get started. I think the most challenging thing when we're painting in that is we get faced with that white. And I don't know why, but that can be a little daunting. And there's something about that you almost hate to put a little bit of paint on it or whatever at first because it might ruin it. I don't know. There's just that. And it's funny because there is such a psychological block with doing that. But if you can take your canvases and put some kind of a back coating on it, an underlayer, that will help to get rid of that and to kind of change that Also, like I said, it kind of gets rid of that fear. It sets your mood. You know, when I was starting to figure out what I wanted to paint yesterday in the afternoon for this particular little meeting, I was thinking I wanted something that had a lot of energy to it, and maybe it's because I was tired and feeling like I needed to pick up my pace a little bit, and so that's what I thought. I thought I wanted the flowers and the image in that to be invigorating. So I created for myself a little template, and you can do these things easily. This one is quite confusing. I just went onto Canva and found different elements and then placed those together. And so created my own template of what I wanted and how I wanted it. Now, of course, they're laying on top of each other and that. So when I came to actually transferring it, I had to pick and choose what and which I wanted to be in the foreground and what moved back into the background. The other thing I found that when I was transferring this onto here, usually I use charcoal transfer paper, and it didn't show up super well. It was enough that I could kind of get an idea of where things were, but then I had to just let loose and work with it and kind of get an idea of like, okay, as I looked at this, I could see the shape moved this direction or the shape moved this direction. You know, one thing as an artist is we need to train our eye to look at things instead of looking at it and saying flower. We need to look at it and see shapes and be able to dissect those shapes and kind of move those around. And so as I looked at that, I obviously couldn't see it really well on here, but I could see, well, the shape went that way. And so I just sort of created my own. The other thing you could use, and I remember a lot, as a seamstress, they have that, chalk. I don't know how that would work to do. You know, you can take your pencil and you can put a pencil on the back of here and then turn it over and draw and transfer that. I bet you could do that with chalk also. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I have a good feeling that that would work. But that white would show up at least enough to kind of give you an idea of where it's at. All right. So let me jump into the project. And what I did here is because it took me about 2 hours to create this. And obviously when I do a live, it's just a short demo. It's to kind of get you motivated and get your art supplies out and go. It's not a full, 2 hours is too long to keep you on here to do that. So what I did is I got the basics down, and I'll walk you through a little bit of that. And then I took you through and showed you very quickly how I finished this up. So let me just transfer us over here. Let's see, that's me. And I don't want that one. I want that one. There we go. Here we start. Let me know in the comments if you cannot hear me. All right. I should be able to be heard. Even though I'm not on here, my mic, it looks like it's still going. So Sue, if you can't hear me, send a little message to me real quick and say, can't hear you. That'll be wonderful. All right. So in this particular one, and I did this, I sped it up because like I said, this is a 2-hour project, 2.5-hour project. And so I sped it up a little bit so you can watch and see. But in this particular one, what I did is I went ahead and I worked on the base where the table is. I painted that. I painted already the background. And what I chose to do that with, thanks Sue, is I wanted it to show the different layers of paint. And so I just did light translucent layers of whites and yellows and kind of a very faint pink color. And then threw in a little bit of turquoisey blue. And I'll show you that. That'll come up later in it. But I wanted those layers to, as you looked at it, I didn't want it to just look like one flat color. I wanted you to see different colors layering on top of each other. And then the vase, I started out just painting that white, and then I add color to it. But as I worked through this particular piece of work, I started to realize that the more color I added to it, kind of experimenting and playing with it, I thought this is turning into like a glass, a tinted glass vase. And so therefore at the very end, I chose to go ahead and add the stems coming down through the vase so that it looked like a clear glass vase that has a little bit of tint and color to it. The flowers, I've gone ahead and I already started painting those, and that's what you see here, and layering the colors on top of those. I started out adding, let's see, what colors were they? They were kind of a pink. I put that down there, but it was a dusty rose colored pink. And then I added the yellow to it, and a little bit of a burgundy. It's called cardinal red, but it would be more like a burgundy color. And when those two met and merged together, it created just a nice, warm, soft orange. So let me go ahead and start this and watch as we go along. Any questions, post them and I'll answer them. So after I got the main color in the shapes, now I'm going back and accentuating, kind of adding the detailing around the actual petal itself so that they stand out. And I find when I'm painting a flower, I like to experiment. And sometimes I'll put down, some colors and I love it. And then I just have this, I don't know what's inside of me to keep playing with it and add more to it. And as I do that, it's like, you think, I messed it up. You have never messed it up. You have to just tell yourself, just keep working through that and keep adding to it, because it just evolves and it changes a little bit. Now I'm going in and I'm adding in the greenery on top of that with a really fine brush, and just getting my little stems in that. I'm choosing to use actually a deep, like a forest green, a hunter green, a deep green. And I'm putting that down as my first layer. So the stems are that, the little leaf, the little buds of leaves are that. And then I'm going to come back and put lighter layers on top. I'll go more towards a mid-tone. And then at the very end, I'll highlight it with almost a lime green on the tips. I won't cover up each one, but it's the layering that you add to your paintings that gives it that interest and makes it come alive. So I'm working with each of the leaves. And I take my time when I'm actually doing this. This is the other reason for speeding it up, is because it would, if you sat there and watched me kind of paint some of those leaves, it would be like paint drying. It would be so slow. What I'm doing now is I've added some of that green. I had it on my brush, and I just had that thought of, well, what if I add a little green to this side of it and add a little bit of color to it. It's very light. It's translucent. I always put it on a lighter. And then if I like it, I'll come back and I'll add a little bit more on top so that it's more opaque. But I want it to be translucent to start with. And I'm coming back in. So you can start to see now I'm layering on this white. This is a buff color. It's kind of like a skin color, and very neutral. And I just start layering this paint back and forth on it. I've already added some turquoisey blue into the vase. And so it almost became like it was reflecting off of the wall that was behind it. I'd finished putting in the layers, and I went back in. I started adding the highlights. And at this point, I am having a great time. I find that when I start painting like this, it's very relaxing. And I let go of that whole, this has to be perfect, and just play with the shapes and the colors and see what else. And like I said, at times I'll think to myself, oh, I messed that up. And then I have to stop myself and say, no, you didn't. You're just letting it evolve and change into something a little bit different than what it was. So if you like something and it makes you nervous or, a little frustrated to keep going, then stop where you are at that point. But if you're a little bit of an adventurous like myself and you aren't too concerned about the outcome, because I always tell myself, I can always put gesso over the top of this and start over. So I don't want to limit myself and the possibilities of what it can become just because I'm afraid to take that next step. I decided to do something a little different than I've before, and I put in turquoise. It's almost a watery turquoise. It's called light turquoise into the centers. And so the little dots, the little things in the center are created. They're done in turquoise. I'm going back now with my green and I'm adding that mid-tone of green. And I'm going, since I'm finished with the flower, I'm going over the tops of those. And I just keep kind of playing with the vase a little bit, adding a little color here and there. For me, color is relaxing. I really connect with color and I love to add a lot of color around me. Color has an impact on our nervous system and it can soothe us. It can energize us. It does such wonderful things for us. And of course, as I'm coming closer to the end now, I've decided I'm going to make this a vase that you can see through, and I'm adding the stems to it at this point. When I looked at my stems this morning, and after I had finished this, I realized, these are pretty hefty flowers. And I'll show you the final when I'm through here, but the stems are a little bit small for the flower themselves. And I thought the proportion is not correct. And so I've gone back in today and changed a little bit. I was working on the shadow of the blue underneath, and it's finished. It's complete. There we go. Let me move it back here. And here is the final piece. And as I said, I noticed that the stems were too thin. They were the thin that I had used for these little greeneries. And I thought, okay, there's no way in life that this hefty, this big blooming flower would be on such a teeny tiny stem. The proportion isn't correct. So I came back in and just enlarged that a little bit on where these flowers would, if those stems were coming off, where they would come down. And so that's something to always look at your things. It's not critical. No one's going to sit there and analyze it, but the eye will pick up proportions a little bit. And if you walk away from something, that's what's the key thing, is walk away from it and then come back and look at it and say to yourself, is there anything else I want to add? Does it need a little bit of changing here and there? And if it feels complete, then it is. Sometimes, most of the times, I can walk away from something, come back, do a little bit of a change, and then it's complete. I don't ever work on things for weeks anymore. I used to on larger pieces of work, but I don't on these smaller ones. And part of it is because of that perfectionist part of me that wants everything to be perfect. I'm learning to stop that and let it go and just relax. All right, let me see what you're saying here, Jerry. Are you using craft paint or thicker paint? Good question, Sue. Thanks for asking that one. I actually used, for this particular, I used the thicker paint and I used the craft paint. So which ones did I use? It's just what I had handy on my desk. Either would work fine. Of course, you know that the craft paint is going to be more translucent, so it's going to need a little bit more to use that. But I just happened to have the greens that I wanted right here on my desk from a previous project, so I used those. And I'm trying to use up my paint too, because paint goes old. And so I want to use what I have. before I go out and get more. This one is a really nice one. This is the Deco Art, and it's called Blush Pink. As you can see right there, it's a real neutral color. And I used that one. I used a yellow. I used this green here. This is, whoopsie, Deco Art, the Citron Green. But I love this one, light olive green. It's probably one of my favorites. And I use this one, which is it's by Anita's, and it's Lily Pad. It's not an emerald green. It is more of, what you'd see out in nature, your leaves and etc. And then the Hunter Green is what I used for my darker colors. And then I showed you, or I told you, the Cardinal Red is what I used to give my accents there. And then I just mixed the two a little bit to create the other hues in here. So, but if you don't feel comfortable mixing, you could use Coral Cove. Something coral would work really well. Or the Master's Touch it's called Pink. But you look at those two, and that's not pink. That's more of a coral. I don't know if it's even showing up on camera that well, but they're very similar. So a coral color would be the other color that I used. Great question. Thanks for asking that. All right. So I want to just encourage you to pull out something and create. Start with, if you're a little slow getting going, just at least paint the background of let me grab one here. What a difference, right? Just paint, just put the undercoating underneath, and just leave it alone. Leave it on your desk for a couple of days. And I don't know, that just calls to me, and it energizes me and says, let's do something. So, whereas this one sits there and it's so nice and clean and neat that I almost, I'll use it, but it kind of, you don't feel as much energy to use it. There we go. So that's my message today, is to try a new undercoating. Practice with your layering. Where's my flower here? This one here, I used, they're mixed together, but I used corals and pinks in this, and then mixed those together, added the yellow, and just played with that. One thing else, let's see if I have it. The other thing too, I really missed using our stencils that we have been using. I had started with our group to get too traditional, or not too traditional, but we were doing everything pretty traditional. I think this is the one we did this month. And even though that's not traditional, the texture is all created by color, and then the lines of the white ink that I used. This one here, the texture is created by the color also. But I just had this, I missed my templates, and I pulled those out. And so the background, which is what I painted first, I created a textured background to fill that in, because I think it adds interest to it. Whereas the eye can get a little bored looking at just a plain background. And so there's my experimentation, my playing around with it first to see what it was like. So get yourself a piece of paper and just, if nothing else, play. This will be a great background for another project in the future. All right. Thank you so much for joining with me today. And group, we've got our project already in the library. Something for you to create. Where is it? I'm sorry I wasn't prepared to show that, but it's a little 4th of July, getting ready for the 4th of July project. That's this week's, and then we will start up with these new ones for the beginning of July. All right, have a great week, y'all, and just be creative. Talk to you later. It's Kathy Freeman with Kathy Freeman Art.